My name is Kristen Hovet, and welcome to the Other Autism podcast. I'm a research communications professional, and I have a master's degree in health studies. I was diagnosed with level 1 autism in my 30s, and I also live with health conditions that are often co-occurring alongside autism. The Other Autism is a place to explore late diagnosed autism, discuss the latest in autism research, and hear directly from autism researchers, help dispel myths and stereotypes about autism and autistic people, and more. If you're autistic or wondering if you might be, I'm hoping this podcast helps you to feel more informed and less alone. Today, I'm speaking with Helena, a late diagnosed autistic and schizophrenic individual. I'd like to thank David for your one-time show of support to the Other Autism podcast. David used the Buy Me a Coffee link not once, but twice to send in a donation. Thank you so much, David. If you'd like to do the same, please check out the link in the show notes that says Buy Me a Coffee. I'd also like to thank the patrons over on Patreon who sponsor the show and in return get some bonus content. I really appreciate their ongoing support and interest in the show. If you're curious to see what's going on over there, head on over to patreon.com/theotherautism, all one word. For a few dollars a month, you can become a patron of The Other Autism as well. And with that, please say hello to my guest for today, Helena.
Hello, my name is Helena. I'm 26 years old, and I'm a late diagnosed autistic and schizophrenic. I'm going to college to study massage therapy, and I'm currently writing a book about my autism and my schizophrenia, but it's more of a fiction book. My book is about an autistic Black girl who was experimented on and has superhuman abilities, and it's a world where humans and aliens are working together. And there are some evil groups a part of the government, and there are the good groups, which are the rebellion.
Were you inspired by any particular books or anything like shows or anything like that?
I was a big fan of Marvel.
Do you know when you're going to be finished or when you're going to put it out?
I'm going to be putting it out around September. I just have to finish the editing and stuff.
Were you born in Canada?
I was born in Sudan.
So how old were you when you came to Canada?
I was 7 years old.
So I'd like to talk about, if you're comfortable, talking more about your autism and schizophrenia diagnosis. How old were you when you got those diagnoses?
I got diagnosed with autism around 23. It was supposed to be for schizophrenia, but then again, they were just like, oh, actually, we think you have autism, because the questions were similar to autistic questions. I started embracing that because it actually makes sense about how my life turned out.
That must have been challenging growing up without knowing that about yourself.
Well, since I was a kid, I've been excluded and bullied by teachers, especially with my schizophrenia. Like, I didn't know what it was, but I kept on seeing and feeling things. And then, like, the hallucinations are bullying me. And sometimes the hallucinations are based on what I went through. That really triggers me. So I sometimes yell at a locker or yell at a wall.
That's really hard because you expect a teacher to be the one protecting you.
Yeah.
And the one who knows better. That's really hard. I'm sorry you went through that. What about other kids?
The other kids, like, they seemed friendly, but as I grew older, it was easier to manage when I was really little at first. But as I grew older, it started to get worse because I was still bullied because I still had autism. Well, I still have autism.
I'm just curious how your life has changed since like before and after the diagnoses.
Well, I feel more seen, and I feel like I can be more like myself and get to know myself a little bit better and have more self-compassion. In my personal experience, it's really hard, but especially in making friends. And I do have communication issues. I struggle with social cues, and I tend to say inappropriate things at the wrong times, which can make people take me the wrong way. With my schizophrenia diagnosis, I can see, feel, and hear things that aren't there. It's really hard to tell what's real and what isn't, and I do take schizophrenia pills. and that helps me a little bit.
What did your family members say when you were going through the assessment process, or were they helpful and supportive? Like, what was that process like?
To be honest, it was a little frustrating because my parents are immigrants. They're having a hard time understanding where I'm coming from. And I did try to explain to my mom, but all she said was just pray about it and it will go away. But
Mm.
I know that's not how it works.
Has it been better though since you have that diagnosis, or
It's better for me. But I do have my siblings that do help me be more in control of myself.
do you have a message for adults who are in the process or contemplating the process of going through the assessments for either autism or schizophrenia?
It can be a little bit scary, but once you do that, you'll have a good understanding about yourself later on. Just know that you're not the only one going through this. I've went through it, so you can do it too.
What are your hobbies or special interests?
My special interests are superheroes, aliens, and superpowers. And that's what I've been writing about. I like writing too because it helps me process my thoughts and it's easier for me to communicate through writing because sometimes my speech can be a little bit disorganized and sometimes it takes time to process what I want to say to people and people sometimes have a hard time understanding that.
What are autistic traits that you love the most in yourself?
I love how I can be very creative because even at work, I can design certain things. I work at Crocs, so a lot of the times the assistant manager asks me to design the Croc shoes with the charms.
Hmm. And what about for schizophrenia? What are your traits there that you love the most?
Sometimes I see certain creatures and I like how I'm able to like feel them. It helps me be more relaxed and not bored.
What are things that you do in the day to kind of keep yourself grounded?
Well, I mostly write and play video games. I like Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts is my fanatic.
What are some other pointers or tips you can think of?
It is really hard to have certain people who just don't understand you, but it's best to surround yourself with people who do understand you and want to understand you. So that way you feel like you're not alone. I'd say write down your thoughts because that's what helps me as an autistic and schizophrenic. If you can, try to find a community. And there is this app called Meetup that helps you find friends. So if you're feeling lonely, maybe you can meet up with other people and get to know other people.
I know some people have sensory challenges. Do you have those as well?
I'm a very picky eater and it depends on the texture. I love very soft textures or crispy textures. And it's really hard for me to eat healthy because of my texture issues.
Have you been able to like figure out any tricks there for eating healthy?
I mostly just figure it out online. I'm trying to make iron-filled mashed potatoes because I got this metal Lucky Iron Leaf from Amazon, and I heard that it helps with your iron. And I have anemia, and it's hard for me to eat healthy.
What are some ways, or how do you balance your personal and work life?
So I balance it by, well, I rest a lot because I do have burnout from always masking my autism. And I do my very best to do it, but it's just really tough.
Do you consciously try to unmask, or is that something you haven't really started doing yet? I know it's challenging.
Well, I unmask at home and I do get exhausted from constant communication from people.
For you, what's the difference between masking and unmasking?
Masking is when you take away your flaws that people don't want to see. And unmasking is just being yourself without fearing the consequences. Like sometimes like I do these dances and I like to stim because it helps me relieve stress, especially when I listen to music. I just even at work, like I do sway a lot.
It's hard because like there's this huge drive in the autistic community to unmask, but then that's not necessarily safe. I think it could even be less safe for those people of color and women especially. So I think there's like arguments to be made for keeping our mask on sometimes, as
Yeah,
hard as
I
that is.
totally agree with you.
Yeah. What's it been like for you to live with racism and ableism at the same time?
It's really hard because there's this other girl that, I mean, I was friends with her. We're still friends to this day. She was considered popular because people were more nicer to her. But when it came to me, it's like I'm just this person that's just there. And I was considered bad as a kid because it felt like no matter what I do, it's just I'm not good enough for these adults.
What are some things you've done to like counter that, I guess?
Go to cognitive behavioral therapy, which did help me a lot, and keep reminding myself that those perceptions of me were not true. And it's still hard for me to this day to like heal from that, but I'm still trying to heal from it. I did certain things that neurotypicals didn't like, especially the teachers, like they were really harsh towards me.
Once you're finished school, and you have your degree, what would you like your life to look like at that point?
I would like to see myself feeling more accomplished and helping other people with injuries because I have an injury myself from a car accident about 3 years ago.
Is that what inspired you to get into that specific degree program?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm thinking about living elsewhere, but considering there's a financial crisis right now, it's kind of hard.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
The picture you sent me, there was a cat. It was very cute.
Yeah.
Is that your cat?
Yeah, it's my cat. His name is Milo. The reason why I got a pet was to help me with my mental health. And it did really help because whenever I see him, like, I always feel this calmness that I have someone there.
Does anyone else in your family have similar neurodiversity or anything like that?
I kind of see it in my dad. Oh, my sister's getting diagnosed with ADHD.
I know that often goes in the same families, like they kind of go together. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me?
Why did you start the other autism?
Well, I was late diagnosed. So I was in my late 30s when I was diagnosed, and I'm already into like research and things like that because I'm a research communication specialist. And so I wanted to have a way to, because I found trouble finding evidence-based content, especially like online, and a lot of the content was very old. So it was very negative. So it would talk about autistic people in negative terms. And so I wanted to help change that narrative because a lot of the research coming out is by autistic people, or there's autistic people on the research teams. So I kind of wanted to highlight that and then also give a platform to other autistic people from different walks of life and experiencing different things. So I kind of do a mixture of like more lecture episodes and then interview episodes. It's been fun. I wish, like, I also work full time. So I wish I had more time to do this. It's been good. So a huge thank you to Helena for being my guest on the Other Autism podcast. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, bye. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, I invite you to leave a rating or review and share this episode with a loved one. If you'd like to submit a question or message to listeners, please send an email. You can find the email address and more in the show notes.